I hope everybody's doing well. It's Coach Robert Cagle here with National Scouting Report. We have got a great roundup of people on this table discussion today about soccer. That is one of those discussions. If you're an athlete that's playing high school and club soccer, if you're a parent of a high school or club soccer athlete, you absolutely want to dial in and pay attention to what is going to be discussed here today with this panel of experts. Guys, let me introduce y'all to some people here that are amazing. I'm going to introduce you guys as an audience to three of the top college soccer scouts in the United States. We're going to start with ladies because ladies always go first. Coach Kayla Sager, it's good to have you with us. She is a former Division I coach. She played Division I as well. She played also professionally. She has got a number of years of college experience plus college coaching experience. She brings a unique flair to this process because she's been a player. She's been a player collegiately. She's been a professional player, and she's also coached it. And now she's able to help dozens and dozens of athletes find their journey in order to get to college. Kayla, it's welcome, and we're glad to have you on our panel today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Next, we're going to go with our Mike Kleiner, Coach Mike Kleiner, one of my favorite dudes, man. I mean, Mike Kleiner's always got a smile on his face. Coach is up in the Northeast and former Division I coach. He also holds his Class A soccer license, coaching education instructor, former Division I coach, former Division I player, professional soccer player as well. I mean, the credentials just keep adding up, and this dude knows the game. Coach Mike Kleiner, it's good to have you with us. I think you've been with us before on one of these conversations, but man, how are you doing?
Doing real well, Robert. Happy to do this and get everybody together, share some information, and looking forward to a good chat.
Man, no doubt. And finally, the last on the list is our guy that's the Texan Canadian. Okay, he's from Canada. I think he grew up there, but Coach Nick Pinto joins us, and Nick's a former academy and technical director, U.S. Soccer. I think he is a B license holder and also a coaching education instructor, former college soccer player, been a part of the academy scene in Canada for a number of years. Was an integral part of a lot of I guess what would be the basics line of a lot of the Canadian stuff going up there that led into the United States for players. And so, Coach Nick Pinto, how you doing in Texas today, my friend?
Everything is good. Thank you for having me.
Man, absolutely. Well, look, let's jump right in. Let's get into this. Audience, as you guys are watching, we're going to cover a number of things that really are discussion points today. I am going to make this statement before we ever get started. It is more difficult today than it's ever been for a high school athlete, club athlete that's in youth sports to get the opportunity to play in college. It's not easier, it's more difficult. In fact, less and less high school players are getting the opportunity to play in college. We're going to talk about some things today that are going to kind of blow your mind a little bit. For example, we're going to talk about all these ID camps that you've been wasting money on, okay? Because the ID camp's not necessarily, are you a camper? Or are you actually a prospect? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about this June 15th date that's about to come about that everybody that's a 27 graduate's all in an uproar about, trying to figure out, am I going to get a call? Am I not going to get a call? Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about this House versus NCAA lawsuit, opt-in, that kind of stuff, how it's affecting things. And hopefully we'll actually get to a point of maybe talking about things that as athletes y'all are doing, you've been told to do, but it's the wrong thing to do. We're going to start off with this. Guys, June 15th is going to be here in a couple days. And I don't know about you, but I've gotten more emails and text messages from parents asking about, okay, what should we be expecting on June the 15th? For everybody that's our audience, I just want everybody to understand what that date means. And then we'll talk about what it means to each one of our panelists. June 15th, after the sophomore year, is the first time that a Division I school, a Division I coach, can actually pick up the phone, make a call, initiate call with a 2027 grad. So a kid that just finished his or her sophomore year, Now they're classed as a junior. They're a 27 grad. June 15th is the first date that a coach can call that athlete and actually make an offer. Now, this is a D1 rule. So let's jump off. Guys, Kayla, I'm going to start with you. So as a former Division I coach, talk to me a little bit about what the June 15th day meant for you as a coach.
Yeah, a June 15th date for me when I was recruiting as a former Division I coach. I mean, I had my list well in advance. I had been watching, that athlete since either, being a freshman or a sophomore. Obviously, there's some exception to the rule if I've just come across them, but I mean, my list has been far in advance, not just, the week prior or the month of June, right? Like, so I've had that list for a while, and it started based off of the kids, activity, how active they were in their recruiting process. So, it starts, as early as ninth grade, but even earlier now. So,
Okay. I want everybody to kind of take a kind of a note of what she just said. Okay. She had the list of the kids that she was going to call way before that. That means the identification recognition phase of the recruiting process, the evaluation phase of the recruiting process, and the comparison phase of the recruiting process had already been accomplished and done, so that when you made that call, and let's talk about this as a panel, guys. The call comes at 12:01 after midnight on June 15th. The Power Four guys, okay, the big of the bigs. Is that call to introduce themselves, or is that call probably to go ahead and solidify an offer on that athlete because they've been following that kid for the last 2 years? Nick, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's going to be both, in my opinion. I mean, it is really going to depend on the athlete, but I mean, moreover, it would probably, for the Power Four is to move forward and get them, because to Kayla's point, they've already been evaluating that athlete for 2, maybe even 3 years in advance, to make a decision in order to move forward and really solidify them on their roster.
Okay. All right. Mike, your thoughts on that?
I have a way of looking at this where I treat it like a game. I think players understand that in their preparation for a game. June 15th is when the whistle blows for kickoff. And if that's when you begin your efforts to try to win the match, you're miles behind, because the opponent arrived an hour early. They got their social stuff out of the way. They've been through a proper warm-up. They've been to the bathroom in the right way. They've had their team talk. And when the whistle blows, that's when you take action, to win the match. And that's when things actually happen. But there's been a whole lot of things happening below the surface for those who want to win.
Okay. So I think, Kayla, as we just went through, Nick and Coach Kleinert both all agree that the June 15th date is a big deal, but it also, there's been so much work that's been done by the college coach for that athlete and about that athlete before that date ever gets there.
100%. I mean, I agree with what you said. It is for the college coach to make an offer, the bigger the big. Like, I played it was Power 5 at the time. So, on that June 15th, that's what it was. Like, I was calling and getting those offers. Like, college coaches already knew who I were. I was already on their radar. It's not like they just, that week met me because I sent an email or something like that. Like, that's not how it works. So.
Or just showed up at their ID camp that 4,000 other kids got the same invitation to.
100%.
But that's an entire subject we'll talk about in just a little bit.
Yeah.
So also, before we jump off this June 15th thing, guys, Kayla, you shared some really good information the other day on one of our calls, and it made me think about this. Yeah, guys, less than 1.2 or 1.3% of the soccer athletes that play high school club soccer, less than 1.2 or 1.3% are ever going to play Division I. So as parents, as y'all are listening to us today, think about this, okay? You're worried about something possibly that doesn't even necessarily affect your child, because they may not be a Division I athlete. But if we're going to find out if a kid's a Division I potential athlete or where they fit, Let's talk about that piece of that real quick. Okay. What about evaluation? Let's talk about evaluation, guys, real quick. All right. How soon should an athlete be properly evaluated? I don't mean by their club director or their instructional guy at their club. I'm talking about somebody that's communicating with dozens of college coaches every day, every week. When should an evaluation start for that kid that wants to play at any level, not just Division I, but at any level? When should that evaluation start? Coach Kleiner, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah, that's so the question is, how early do you want to be taken seriously in the process by a college coach? You know, so how early do you want to get on the watch list? And so after June 15th, obviously June 15th, after your sophomore year, you've already going from Division I, Division II and III can talk to you from the beginning of high school, or just talk to you, you know. And so that recruiting process begins a lot earlier than people believe. I think that's one of the big shocking things when you talk to people is how early the process really begins from a college coach's perspective, you know. And perspective mirrors the players in the same way. That's kind of my point about the looking at the prep for a game. But you know, this is the piece that they just need to understand that, you know, college coaches operate, that's their career. They operate early.
Yeah. And that evaluation piece needs to be done in a proper kind of way, right? So Nick, in a perfect world for young men, and I'm going to ask Kayla the same question for you for girls. Not that you don't work with both girls and guys, you do. But Nick, in a perfect world, when should a player really worry about getting evaluated by someone that actually, I don't know, understands what the process looks like? When should that evaluation begin for them?
For me, it's, you know, their eighth grade year going in to be a freshman, starting early. I mean, I can take it for example with my own son. I mean, he's already sent out emails. He's an incoming freshman this year. He's already started the process. So to me, the earlier the better. And, you know, we talked about, you know, giving yourself 24 months to getting into that recruiting process is critical, especially if you want to play at a, you know, higher level like the Division Ones. So in my opinion, you know, I would definitely say eighth grade for, you know, for sure. Or beginning of your freshman year, you should start getting into that process.
Okay. And again, I want to echo something you said. That is for a kid that potentially could be a high level type player. But even if the kid that's not going to be a potential high level player, to Coach Kleinert's point, D2, D3 NAI programs, junior college programs, guys, there's no June 15th date for them as far as contact. So they're D2 guys that already made offers out, D3 guys that got offers out to sophomores and freshmen and juniors. I mean, so that piece of that's really important. Kayla, on the women's side, on the ladies' side, talk to us in terms of when you think is a time to really start to really get a hard evaluation on a kid.
Yeah, it's not that different from Nick's, like as early as possible in their career. So like same time, eighth, ninth grade, you know, really ninth, just so you know how serious probably the athlete is about it. But you know, the sooner you get the coaches the information, you know, the sooner and more further along you are in the process, right? So whether that's them coming to see you in person or film, like video is massive. Like, you know, right from the start, if a coach does not X for your video, then you are not being recruited. And no matter how many conversations you have had with he or she, like they do not X for your film, they're not interested in you. So,
Okay. All right. I'm gonna come back to that. Remind me of that when we start talking about camps a little bit too, in ID camps. I think that's really important. Folks, as an audience, what I want you to take away from what we've just discussed, June 15th is a big day. It really is. It impacts a very few number of kids, truly. It really does, from a Division I perspective. But what happens at June 15 has a trickle down effect on what's going to happen with everybody else, D2s and AIs and Division IIIs. The bigger question here that you need to ask yourself if you're a parent or an athlete watching this, here's the bigger question, okay? Why did you not get a call from a D2 NAI or D3 program? And why do you not have offers from them already when they could already be communicating with you and offering you? And I know the answer to that question is because you haven't been evaluated properly by someone that actually can give you some guidance on where your skill set fits. That's not an indictment of club directors or club coaches or technicians at the club level. It's not. But what it is a proponent of is to be properly evaluated by people that literally live in the space each day with college coaches. That's what this panel does. Let's move on to the next question, guys. Let's move on to someone. Everybody right now, the buzz is transfer portal, right? We're dealing with the transfer portal buzz. I see big nods from you guys coming on because that's the big thing right now. So let's talk a little bit about that. Kayla, I think you're the closest to a couple years out from having coached collegiately at Division I level. So the portal was kind of something that was beginning and be a part of the process for you. So let's go in it with you first on this. And how's the NCAA transfer portal impacting the high school soccer athlete in the world we live in today?
Yeah, it's impacted, tremendously for sure. Like, it's a big deal, right? Like with the amount, no, you can transfer as many times as you want, and just all that. So now coaches don't even know what their recruiting class looks like, so how can they recruit high school kids when they don't know what their current roster is going to look like at the end of the season, so the players have a lot of power and not saying that that's a good or a bad thing, but it does affect how everything else evolves around it for sure. So with the uncertainty of how many kids are going to leave and how many kids I need to replace then, especially at a higher Division I level, like we're talking about, if you don't recruit early, those kids are gone or already committed somewhere. So it affects it a lot for sure.
Okay. One of the things I've talked to a lot of different coaches about, and you just alluded to this, Mike and Nick, y'all may have heard it as well too, is that a coach with the transfer portal now, our audience may not understand that the current college coach is having to re-recruit his current roster to keep those kids there and then make an assessment on who he loses or who she loses as a player, and then make a determination if he or she as a coach is going to go to the transfer portal to fill that spot because they're losing a 22-year-old man that's got 1 year of eligibility left, and they don't necessarily want to fill that with an 18-year-old man that they're going to have to transition into the whole college life. And so people don't realize the impact that has not only on the players in high school, but how the coaches have to re-recruit their classes. Mike, Nick, is there any insights you guys have heard from coaches that you've talked to recently that falls in those lines?
Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, to Kayla's point, I mean, coaches are building rosters year by year. It's not like it was before where they're building rosters 2-3 years out. They're building it year by year because of the volume. I mean, if we look at what happened with the spring transfer portal, an increase of 20% 12 hours before the window opened of athletes going in. So that's a huge change. And for those coaches to start to manage, and if they're not actively looking at their recruiting and who they've been evaluating and looking at their film, it's going to impact them. But to your point, the best thing for them right now is they're looking at, you said it between a boy or a man. Are they looking at a 19-year-old player, or are they going to look at a 22-year-old player with 3 years experience? So it's making it a lot more difficult for the high school athlete transitioning into the college to get those commitments, and for the coaches, it's even more difficult now to manage their entire roster there.
Okay, Mike, your thoughts? Anything to add?
Yeah, I would say that you kind of hit the point pretty hard, but it's a direct quote I heard from a friend who's a D1 coach said, "Why would I sign an 18-year-old boy when I sign a 23-year-old man, 24-year-old man?" That was that maybe that's a paraphrase, but that was the point and they've kind of given up on the idea that they've got to run the team every year. They would love, of course, to have a team and develop it over time, but they were tearing it up and rebuilding every year. And D2 coaches have told me that, hey, we were already kind of doing this, and now that the transfer portal's there, we were kind of already informally telling people we'd help them to transfer. If they wanted to go somewhere big, they're just happy to have them for a year or two. And so now that's just gone haywire. Unfortunately, and it's a massive headwind for players coming out of high school. There's no way around it for male or female athletes. It's just, it's a really difficult place.
It really is, and it goes back to something I want, and we're going to, you know, one of our talking points is what the kids need to be doing, right now. And the truth is, if you're a parent and a kid, and you just heard what these three people and what we shared with you, don't misunderstand what that means. It means that you better understand when you're in the ninth, 10th, 11th grade, what your projected skill set's going to look like. And you better understand then where you need to be trying to get in front of the right college coaches. Because when you're sitting there, if you're never going to be a Division I or Division II skill set player, why in the world are you going to Division I, Division II ID camps? Why in the world are you sending out a bunch of emails to places where the coaches aren't even looking at your grad class because they're going to take a transfer portal kid or a junior college kid? And I realize that guys, Coach Pinto, Coach Sager, Coach Kleinert, myself, as an audience, it's hard for them to grasp what we're telling them because they've been told everything else that's complete opposite. And so much unreal misinformation and bad information. And it's being given out by people with good intentions, but it's being given out by people that don't know. Guys, if you're hearing this today, if you didn't hear what Coach Sager, Coach Kleinert, Coach Pinto just said, you need to open your eyes and your ears. If you're a freshman or a sophomore, you better be evaluated by somebody that knows what they're doing, and you better understand where you need to be looking and going to the right places, because if you're not, you're wasting your time, energy, and your parents' money. Because the D1 guys, portal first, rebuilding a roster every year. And Mike, to your point, the D2 guys were always having to do that anyway, because their best players would make all conference in D2 and then bump up and go to D1. And that was really before we ever even knew about transfer portals, right? I mean, that was going on then.
Right.
Great talking points, guy. Anything y'all want to add to that?
One thing, Robert, just as to tell parents, I do a lot at the youth level, instructional level. We do a great job in this country of making sure that everyone who wants to play soccer has an opportunity to play the game. And
Yes.
that is a wonderful thing. I'm a grassroots coaching education instructor, and it is something that we're spreading the game, the world's greatest game, but just to under it at the youth level, and so that gets set in your head that, okay, if things aren't great here, I might go to another spot. There's the play. If you get levels, and especially once we reach college level, there is not a place in college soccer for everyone who wants to play. It's just not possible. The numbers aren't there.
The numbers aren't there. And Mike, we have a little bit of a tough connection on your end. I don't know if it's something you might want to check while we're doing, but you're going in and out just a little bit on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's move to camps and showcases. And I mean, we could spend a week, 8 hours a day talking about this. We really could. Let's talk about camps, showcases, and are they important? Nick, let's start off with you on this subject. Camps and showcases, are they important?
I mean, yes, they're important. Both are extremely important because, I mean, from a showcase perspective, both on the girls platform one and on the boys platform, you're going to get exposure. If you're in an ECNL, MLS Next 2, on the girls side, even some of the GA programs. But then are you getting the right attention, or are you just being asked to be a camper at an event? So they're important. And then from the camp perspective, where are you? What are you there? Are you actually invited, or are you just an email to say, hey, let's fill a roster spot in our camp? So both are fundamentally important, but understanding, from the camp perspective, what level you're at is a key aspect to understand.
Okay. Kayla, your thoughts on that about, and you can expound on that any direction you want to.
Yeah, so camps could be very useful, right? So if you're going to generic camp invites as you need to be realistic with yourself, right? And your expectations of what you're expecting. So I get all the time that, oh yeah, I'm getting, invites from all these Power Fours. I'm like, personal invites. And they're like, yeah, like it has my name on it. No, Just because it has your name on it, I promise you that's not a personal invitation. So, if you're spending money on these, generic camp invites, you're probably not involved in the correct recruiting process. I could tell you that if that's the only thing that you're doing that you think is going to get you recruited, because you and all those hundreds of kids that are on that camp are all chasing the same exact spot. However, on the other hand, if a coach personally invites you to a camp, that's a whole different other story, and you should know the difference. Because one, you're first on campus at that school, right? So you get a good feel of, is this the community, the environment good for me, right? Then additionally, you are getting coached by that coaching staff. So then you get to answer your other question. Do I like this coach's coaching style? Does this suit me? Additionally, most of the time they will have current players that are on the team there, right? So you can interact with them. How's the culture? If they're hopping in, if they're participating in drills, you can see how the level is, right? Am I really far off from the current players, or am I holding my own and, I can, if not raise the level or keep the same intensity. So, and that's what college coaches are looking for when you get those personal invitations to camp. If a coach doesn't know your name, you're sent right into the bottom group or whatever, and you have no interaction with that coach, right from the start, you were sent a generic camp invite.
I used to tell parents and kids, there's no question. There's no question when you're the prospect, because you're with the head coach, you're with the recruiting coordinator or the assistant coach. You're not with one of the club coaches that's working it. You're not with one of the players that's working it. You're not with one of the local high school coaches that's working it. You're there with that. And a lot of times, let me tell y'all what happens too, is the kids they're actually recruiting, there's a constant camera guy following that group. And they're filming and watching those particular drills and those particular kids play. The parents may not realize that camera's following those people, but that's what's following. Mike, anything you want to add to that piece of that on the ID camps and the showcase stuff?
Yeah, it's another tough one for parents. The joke is you never ask your barber if you need a haircut. They will always tell you, yeah, come to our camp. The ID camps are a part of the recruiting process. They're sort of the whole thing. I find psychologically, kids, especially who may be behind in the process, feel they're ready to go and spend the money and travel and go to the camps and do that, because that activity that helps me feel good, like I'm done something, But we just got to make sure that you're getting traction for those efforts, and that investment of time and money, and what that means is you got to establish communication to be ID'd before ID camp. Going up a week after the camp, everyone's like, hey, should I email the coach the next day, the 2 days later? Well, a week later or so, you send them an email and say, hey, remember me? I was number 72 in the blue penny. Like it's just until you're ID'd, and I don't know.
Gotcha. And again, man, you had some good information, Mike, there, I'm sure, but we lost some of it. Thoughts here that I'm going to share about this real quick, okay? And Kayla, we're not going to talk about the specific school or the specific coaches on this situation, but I want to share with our audience something. Kayla had the opportunity to be a part of a camp in recent weeks and months, and she's got a great relationship with that college coach, and so as they were there, and Kayla, I'm paraphrasing this, I'm putting words in your mouth, but if I'm wrong on the statement, you can correct me.
No, you're good.
Maybe there was 100 kids, maybe about 100 kids there, right, that were there, and that coach made it very clear that there was really only one of them that was there to be potentially recruited. One out of 100 at that ID camp at this particular school, Division I, not to be named, that there was one kid out of 100 that had paid for this ID camp to come and flown halfway across the country to get there, was of interest to that coach. One out of 100. And then when that camp ended, There was 0 out of 100 that he was interested in. Folks, that's your wake-up call. That goes on every day at these Division I ID camps. And every one of those kids, Kayla, let me tell you how they're going to do this, okay? They're going to go back home. They're going to bust that coach up with a bunch of emails and how they enjoyed the camp. And do you remember me, like Mike said? And they're going to, I really enjoyed it. You're my favorite coach ever. They're going to, and that coach is going to sit there and get 100 emails, all right? And not one of them may these coaches ever send back and say, hey, thanks for coming to my ID camp, but hey, you're not a kid that's going to fit for us. We wish you the best in the process. Very few coaches will ever send that email back to that kid. But yet there's 100 of them now that went to that camp that should get that email. Here's what's my point to all this as you guys listen to us as an audience. Coach Pinto, Coach Sager, and Coach Kleiner have given you unbelievable detail on how ID camps can be important. And it can be, as Mike said, part of the recruiting process. But if you're putting all your eggs in a basket of camps and ID camps, then you're misunderstanding that that's a simple part of the puzzle. It's one piece of the puzzle. Because those coaches aren't making all their decisions off of whether or not you do good at camp or not. Let's ask this question now. And y'all kind of handled it, but I want to clarify it a little bit. How can a parent and a kid tell the difference between a money grab camp where everybody's coming and a kid that's actually a prospect that should go? How can they tell? Mike, I'm going to come to you. Maybe we got a good connection.
Yeah. I think personalization, when you read the message, if you've been invited, there should be some indication. As a college coach, I want a player that I want to play in our team. I want them to feel special, like to know, hey, we know you, we want you. And so to do that, I would make it clear to that player that, hey, in this game, I really like the way you did this, and so I've seen you, I know you, and I'm specifically, and so other than that, it's dear player, blah, 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 please come. And so that's the differentiation I would look for.
Okay. Personalization, something specific about that player that brought the coach to want them to come to that camp. Okay. Kayla, for you?
Yeah, for me, there's two huge hints, right, that you'll see. First, if it's like 2 sentences and it's just, hey, I like you, here's your personal invitation to camp. That's a personal invitation. If you get a paragraph and all this information and a graphic and generic, there it is. Like, that's the easiest indicator. If you get 2 sentences in an email saying, hey, Kayla, I like you, I want you to come out to camp so I can see you play in person, let me know if you can make it, personal invitation. Also, at the bottom, if you still think that paragraph with the graphic and all the facts about the school and this and that is still a personal invitation because it still introduces you as Dear Kayla at the top. If you scroll all the way down at the bottom, you'll see an unsubscribe button. And that's how you know it was mass email that was just sent out and it was generic.
Yeah, no, excellent point. And to add to that, Kayla, just look at the email signature. 95% of these camp invites will not have the coach's cell phone number or contact information. So when it's personal, that coach is sharing their information because they want to be in touch with you and find out more. So, again, the long paragraphs, but also the personalization, and just look for the email address for their contact information. 95% of those don't have them, and that you can really tell that difference between a custom email versus a boilerplate email.
And I'm going to throw one other thing out there for the audience too that's a big standout for me. And parents don't realize this. I dealt with it last night with an athlete. They were all fired up, y'all. They got this really cool email. It was on the college coach's letterhead at their university. It looked all official, right? It was actually a real letter. It was mailed to the school. Anyway, the point is that people don't realize that organization that's actually putting that on, and I won't name the group. There's several of those groups that put on these college coach showcases and all that kind of stuff. And what people don't realize is that the organizer, the one that owns that particular showcase event, they're paying the coach about $2,000 to $4,000 to use their letterhead to send out all these emails out to all these databases that they've gotten from these different club organizations, and that's what's being done. There is no, yeah, it will say Dear Kayla, but at the end of the day, it's going to be, and then you look down there and you got to sign up at some junior day or college volleyball or college soccer camp.com or whatever that is. This is at the bottom. You know right then that's not real. You're part of a money grab deal. Sure, can you go and have fun as a player? Yes. Could you go and maybe catch the attention of one coach? But understand there's a difference in a coach being paid $2,500 to work an event and a coach coming to recruit an event. And I need everybody to understand that. There's a difference between a coach being paid to work an event and a coach coming to recruit an event. They have a different mentality and a different mindset. Guys, about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, this House versus NCAA lawsuit settlement was finally signed by the judge out in California, and it is a talking point. It is a buzz point right now in the sports world, especially at Division I level. Let's talk about who's going to be affected by this House versus NCAA ruling. Who's actually going to be affected by it? What's your opinion of that, Nick? Who's going to be affected by this ruling?
I mean, the number is low, right? It's what, probably about 1.2, 1.3% it's going to affect. So it affects a small amount of athletes, more specifically D1 athletes, if at any. So, I mean, it's a small amount that it affects, and it's obviously going to change, a little bit of how things are going to operate moving forward. But again, it's a small group of individuals that it affects.
Okay. And I want to give clarity to the audience real quick, okay? There's a two-edged sword to this particular piece of legislation or this particular ruling. What Nick's referring to here is that the NIL participation opt-in money revenue sharing piece, guys, that only impacts about 1.2 or 1.3% of the high school players that could potentially play in college. That's what Nick's referring to. That's how small of an impact. That's how small that reach is concerning the money piece of that. But here's the backside of that particular sword, that two-edged sword. Okay, here's the backside of that sword. In that legislation that's been signed off on, there's roster limitations and roster reductions at the Division I level. Kayla, how does that impact kids in high school?
Yeah, it's massive. Again, it's just like the theme of what we've been talking about here, then the transfer portal still comes in and they need to really make decisions regarding their roster. So it just is massive. Yeah.
Okay. And what we're referring to there is the negative impact it has. For example, when a coach at a Power 4 school was told that their roster limitation just got put into play and they were 14 kids over on their last year's roster, that means there's 14 kids they've got to move away from their roster. They've got to cut that roster down by 14. At the end of the day, and that could be any school, it could be a different number at any school. That means those 14 kids that were once playing Division I are no longer playing. They're either going to have to move laterally in the portal to another Division I school, or they're going to have to go down to Division II, NAI, or Division III. And here's what happens. When those kids that are getting moved around and shuffled because of roster limitations, roster cuts, that has a direct negative impact on the high school players that are still scrapping for those D2, D3, NAI roster spots. And if our audience doesn't understand, that's where the big impact's going to come in. It's not because of the 1.2 or 1.3% of the kids that were trying to potentially could play D1 Power 4 and get revenue share, whatever that deal is, which in soccer is going to be a very minimal amount of revenue share money, but still it's there. But the bigger cut on the backside of that sword is going to be how it negatively cuts through these kids that are trying to get those D2, D3 spots that are high school kids that are going to be filled by rosters. The roster is going to be filled by drop downs from Division I. Guys, that in and of itself is a huge deal. And people, we could talk about more of it today, but as of this particular meeting that we're having today with you guys, we don't have all the details out of how exactly it's going to roll itself out to negatively impact the younger classes. We just know it will. And we don't have numbers at this point in time specific to support it, but we just know that because the numbers are what they are, it's going to have that negative impact on that high school player. And guys, once that cat's out of the bag, that cat's never going to get put back in that bag. And so we're never going to be able to regain that again. And so that's going to be one of those things that parents don't realize. Let's move on as we close out, guys. Let's talk about what should a high school athlete be doing right now. Okay? What does a high school athlete need to be doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost, you need to send me your film. Nothing can be done before you send me your film. And for college coaches, that's what's going to get you evaluated. At the end of the day, can you play for my team, right? So film's the most important thing. If you don't have a highlight tape, you need to get one. The second question after the film would be, what do your grades look like, right? Like, what's your GPA? To then further the evaluation, because even if you have all the skills on the field, but you have a 1.7 GPA, that's an issue, right? So the two most important things: get me your film, and let's talk about your grades, what they look like.
Okay, Nick, what else you want to add to that?
I mean, yeah, absolutely the game film, but I mean, first thing is get evaluated, and to what Kayla's saying, know where you play. Coach Mandy is an amazing scout with the NSR, and she always says you got to fish in the right pond, right? You got to know where you stand and where you fit, and allowing us to evaluate that video and see where you play will definitely help ensure that we're getting your videos to the right coaches. But making sure you're going to be successful in your journey, and that's really the key, is being successful and knowing where what pond you should be fishing in it, D1, D2, D3, wherever it may be. But that it all starts with a proper evaluation, and I think that's the key right now.
Okay.
100%. I think being realistic in the process, it is the best thing you could do for yourself. And this goes for parents too. Like, yeah, don't, I know everyone wants to play Division I, right? And sometimes the parents more than the kid, but with what we're saying right now, we're talking about how hard that is nowadays, right? So during this process, when you are being evaluated, you need to be fishing in the right pond, right? The correct pond, and just being realistic with yourselves.
Well, and that goes back to what we talked about earlier, very early on in this, as we start winding down our panel for today and our conversation. 28s and 29s, guys, y'all better be evaluated right now. You better understand what your skill sets are today, or if you don't, you're going to start chasing a bunch of, I'm going to call it chasing dreams instead of reaching goals. And I want everybody to understand you can reach goals and also chase dreams at the same time. But if your dreams are unrealistic to your skill set, then it never can really be a goal for you. And that's the piece of it that most people don't understand. So if you're a 28 or 29, I'm going to encourage you, if you see this or hear this, or even have a chance to somebody shares it with you, just the information, you need to get in touch with me, or you need to get in touch with Coach Pinto or Coach Sager or Coach Kleinert. We're all over social media, so it's not like you can't find us. And you need to send us your video. We need to watch you. We need to evaluate you, and we need to determine what you're projectable as a player at a young age. And look, that starts the process. And that starts, and as Kayla said, as you said, nothing starts until an evaluation happens. Nothing can happen until evaluation happens. You can go to all the ID camps you want to. You can go send all the emails you want to. You can have all those online little free profiles that everybody's getting, these club directors are giving people. At the end of the day, coaches ain't paying attention to that. They're just not. Because you haven't been evaluated by a trusted source that they know and they understand, that they understand how to evaluate a player. So for 28s, 29s, it's right now. The next thing I'm going to tell y'all is if you're a sophomore, you haven't sat for an ACT or an SAT, you've been given bad advice not to take. If you haven't taken it, you need to take it. You need to start those numbers are going to dictate some money that's going to be accessible to the coaches to offer you from the university. And if you haven't taken it, you need to take it. Again, that's just part of when we do an evaluation of a player, we talk about all those things with players. Those are the things. Closing comments, Nick, for everybody as we close out. For everybody, and I'll give you an opportunity. Then we'll go to Mike for some closing comments, and Kayla, and then we'll end this thing up for the day.
Yeah, I mean, to close out, start early, get evaluated, and make sure you're fishing in the right pond. Make sure you're putting yourself in front of the right coaches to get that opportunity. But the earlier, the better for you to be successful in your journey of becoming a student athlete.
Okay, Kayla.
Yeah, I would say if there's a lot of things you heard today that you were unaware of, then there's a lot about this process that you're not aware of. So you need to obviously get with one of us because there's a lot about this process you don't know, and we do. So, it starts with the evaluation, and let's talk from there.
Got it. Coach Kleiner.
I'd say that college coaches are looking for match winners at every single position. And it's really important how you present yourself to the college coach in a mature and professional way. And that's something that I really enjoy working with athletes on. And so that's a big, important piece that a lot of people don't give enough attention to.
Every coach is looking for a kid that's a match winner.
Yeah. No
Like it.
passengers on the team bus. Everyone drives.
No doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had opportunity to take something today from our panel of amazing college scouts. And when I say that 3 of the best in the country are on this call, they are. Coach Kleiner, thank you so much for being with us today. Coach Pendo, thank you. Coach Sager, thank you so much for y'all's input. Your number 1, your input. Number 2, your desire to help young people and give them true guidance. Number 3, for your passion for the sport. And for your desire to continue to share your passion with other people for the sport. Coach Robert Cagle here, National Scouting Report, signing out. You guys have a great day. Reach out to us so we can get your kid evaluated. That's where it all starts.